Hi, this is Zach with Worn&Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at the Steinhart Ocean One Premium Titanium 500. Steinhart is a brand that I'm sure a lot of our readers are very familiar with. They're a brand that we did actually several reviews of early on, a few years ago really, namely one that was very popular, still one of our most read articles to date, which is a review of the Steinhart Ocean Vintage Military, which was a Rolex Mil-Sub homage watch, one that got extremely popular, huge cult status, was constantly sold out, and at least I think in some circles kind of made the brand, kind of recognized in the kind of cult collector circles. But one thing that will always kind of work against Steinhart is the fact that they are a brand that is largely homage based. So they're not really about original designs. They're a brand that takes clearly huge hints from Rolex Submariners. Some watches more than others. Some are straight up, not quite clones. They have different sizes and everything, but the aesthetic is clearly 100% derived from Submariners, from deep seas, things of that nature. This newest watch is a little bit of a departure, which is what made it very interesting, really caught our eye, and we felt would be worth taking a closer look at. It clearly has the Submariner sort of DNA there. There's some obvious cues there in the dial and the bezel. It also uses the case shape that they've used on those other watches, but then they took it a slightly different direction, something more modern, more clean. Obviously the hands are not hands that have ever been present, to my knowledge at least, on a Submariner before. Also the use of blue in here. So it's kind of a different concept, one that just made the watch, I think, a little bit more appealing, a little bit more different, and also just a cool offering from the brand. But there are also a few other standout features of this that made it, kind of in Steinhart fashion, a really good value, which I think I'll talk about a little more later. But it's an all titanium case, all titanium bracelet. It's powered by a Soprod A10 movement, which is a very nice Swiss-made automatic movement, beautifully decorated, which will show you that is not an inexpensive movement by any means, and it's often in watches that cost much, much more than this. This watch, give or take, in the US without VAT tax, comes in around $540. So that is actually an incredible price for something with a Soprod. And I think I'd argue that at some point that the what you're not paying for is really originality, and I think in some cases, as we'll show you, there are some issues with this watch in terms of finishing. So what you do get though is a fun watch, a nice looking watch with a very, very good movement in it at a very, very decent price. So let's take a closer look. The case of the Steinhart Ocean One Titanium is the same style, kind of cut, if you will, of the other Ocean watches. It's 42 millimeters by 50 millimeters lug to lug. Actually, it's fairly tall. It's surprisingly tall, but it doesn't wear quite as tall as it sounds. But it's 14.83. But it is to the top of the very nice domed sapphire crystal here, which, as you can see, stands very tall off of the bezel with this really nice chamfer there. But obviously, as it indicates in the name, big feature of this watch is that it is all titanium, which makes it lighter weight, makes it a bit of a more modern approach to the watch. Obviously, the watch looks a bit more like a sub, but I think in making it 500 meters as well as titanium, it is obviously playing off the popularity of the Tudor Pelagos, which is obviously in the same kind of family and concept. But now just getting into the titanium, and this is honestly where I think the biggest flaw of the watch is, not making it of titanium. That's great. It's really lightweight, and I happen to personally love the dark kind of coloration of titanium. But you have some different titanium colors going on here, and I'm not sure if that's because different parts are from different manufacturers. But to my eyes, it just it makes the watch end up looking a little bit cheap. So the case is one color, the bezel is a little bit lighter, the crown is also a little bit lighter. The end link here kind of matches the mid case, but then the bracelet is sort of a different, duller, dark color. I'll get into the bracelet later. It's actually my least favorite part of the watch, but that's for different reasons. So, it's just like somebody who now, I really look at all the little details of a watch and, thinking about all the value and everything. Where are you saving money on a $550 watch with a Soprod movement? And maybe it's in kind of elements of that where like the pieces don't quite match. I mean, I am admittedly getting kind of picky about it, and when you're wearing it, is it really something that's going to affect you or bother you? Is it true on every single one of the Ocean One titaniums? I don't know, but this is the one that we purchased, so it is true on this one. Looking at the design, though, so you have this very familiar Ocean One design. You have the very Submariner bezel here. It does have a ceramic insert, which is great. So you have a really nice scratch-resistant kind of top surface here from the sapphire to the ceramic. Once again, also makes it more of a modern concept of the watch. Looking at the profile from the side, the classic case shape, here that is very thin and lithe. I like the case shape quite a lot. The central case really, sometimes on watches, 42 millimeter dive watches in particular, they can get really chunky. Here it's just, it's nicely proportioned with most of the thickness obviously coming from the case back and the bezel and the crystal, as I said before, but those elements tend to make a watch, they don't wear as large, if you will, as a chunky central case. So all in all, it makes just a more kind of comfortable and wearable design. Screw down crown here, said titanium as well, as far as I know, and with the kind of Steinhart crowned S logo there. The bezel mechanism is a 120 click unidirectional bezel, which you'd expect to find on a dive watch like this. It's actually a very nice mechanism. It's a little tough to turn at first. I imagine it'll break in, but it lands on a nice spot. It's fairly snappy. It doesn't have much back play, so it is a fairly nicely built one that it's something I always like to find. Now flipping the watch over. The case back here is obviously a display case back showing off the beautiful Soprod A10 movement. I really like the design decoration of these movements. It is part of Steinhart's premium line, which they do feature nicer movements. And the Soprod A10 is a very well-regarded movement, a very beautiful movement, and one that is a lot less common than Solitas and ETA 2024s. Not to say it is better or worse than any of them, but it is just a little bit more uncommon, making it a little bit more of a boutique feel, if you will. And it is usually actually also decorated a little bit more nicely out of the box. The A10 is a unique design. It is sort of meant to be a replacement for 2824s and 2892s, but it is a different design. And as you can see here, it is very attractive. So you have perlage decoration all around this kind of main plate that's under the rotor here. You have a gold-toned rotor. You have perlage under the balance. You have blued screws throughout. You have some beveled edges in there. It's just, it's really something that's very enjoyable to look at. One thing I actually really like is actually the center bearing here even has a little bit of graining to it and has little blued screws on it. It's just a very nice attention to detail. One thing that I do find interesting about this watch, and it's not something that I am able or about to test anytime soon, but it is a 500-meter watch. You don't often see sapphire casebacks, or rather, I don't know if that's sapphire. It's a display caseback on a 500-meter watch. It's obviously a potential break point. 500-meter depth, granted, is a lot further down than most people are going to go, especially with I think an inexpensive, relatively inexpensive homage watch. So, you can take it with a grain of salt. That is just something that kind of jumped out to me as being like, I wonder how exactly that works. Looking at the dial of the Steinhart Ocean One titanium, you'll see the obvious Submariner references that the whole Ocean One line contains. We also see where it kind of departs and becomes its own kind of quirky and fun, kind of modern interpretation. So the dial surface is matte black, on which you have the kind of classic markings: triangle at 12, rectangles at 3, 9, circles for the other hours. Typically you'd have a date at 3 and then another rectangle at 6, but here they moved the date to 6, which I think was a great move. I think it actually looks really nice there. It keeps the symmetry of the watch. It kind of includes it a little bit better. There's something more balanced to me about this arrangement than having sort of an opening on the right side. So I think that was a really smart move there. The chapter ring then has some additional markings on it. That is not, something you typically see, especially with the use of blue here for the 5-minute intervals. The little touch of blue, I think it's great. I think it really it is one of the most attractive features of the design. It was a nice use of a color. Works well with the titanium, as the black. It also works with the fact that there's BGW9 lume on the dial, on the hands, and on the bezel, so there's just kind of a blue and gray theme going on. Looking now once again actually at the dial surface, you have the Steinhart logo below 12. You have then at 6 Ocean 1 and titanium 500 in a kind of knocked out blue bar. Once again, I think the color works there. It's not too much text or anything. Now looking at the hands, so this is perhaps the biggest departure from the classic Rolex style or the Tudor watches that are out there, and that's just using these kind of broad, straight sword hands. They work really well with the look of the watch. I mean, I think it's a very smart hand choice, one that is a nice departure from the Mercedes hands or snowflake hands. Or Milsub kind of Roman sword hands. So I really like that look. I think it really it is the most, the one that takes the most away from your typical sub look there. Then the second hand, nice little second hand, once again using that blue and has a triangle tip with a lume filling. Now quickly looking at the bezel, as I said before, it's a ceramic bezel, so it's high gloss, always has kind of a modern feel to it over an aluminum bezel. You have the kind of classic markings here in the classic arrangement, and they are filled with BGW9 lume. The lume on this watch is very good. It's actually very bright in the bezel, very bright in the hands, a little bit duller on the dial, but not too dull. I mean, it's actually it's decent, charges decently. As I recall, that was a weak point on the Ocean Vintage Military, at least the one that I had, which had the old radium lume, which never really is quite as strong. So I like the BGW9 lume here. It also, once again, plays off of, the Pelagos has the same lume, so it does keep it in kind of this Rolex Tudor play-off concept. On the wrist, the Steinhart Ocean 1 Titanium wears well. If you've ever tried one of the Ocean 1 watches on, you'll not be surprised by how it fits. 42 is actually a good size for these, for kind of a more modern interpretation of these sub-ish watches, if you will. It's not too big, and obviously, in taking the watch a little bit away from the source material, making it a little bit more of its own thing, I think it's smart also to change the size up. But it fits well, and even the 50 millimeter lug to lug, it doesn't feel too long, at least on my wrist, 7-inch wrist here. So. I think it's an easy watch to wear. The titanium obviously keeps the weight down as well, which is nice. It is a bit tall, but because of the way it's shaped and everything, as you can see, it kind of sits in the wrist a little bit. It doesn't feel too tall at all, but it is obviously, a somewhat larger sized watch. Looking at the bracelet now, so it's a 22 millimeter lug width, same as the other Ocean 1s, and it comes on this oyster style titanium bracelet. And I'll just be blunt about this. It was the most weakest part of the watch. The finishing on it is really odd. It almost looks like it's not finished fully. Like it's a coarse, almost rough gray, but not in like a blasted kind of a way, in a way that feels like it's a little bit raw, a little industrial, but it has some funny kind of marking scuffs in it, and it picked up a lot of other scuffs really fast. It just doesn't feel like it was made correctly or finished correctly or something, and it doesn't match the case, as I mentioned before. So I don't really love the way it looks. It also has like a weird kind of texture. It's kind of like chalkboardy, which gives me the chills occasionally. I don't love that. And the clasp too feels just a little bit cheap. So I didn't really love I didn't really love the whole bracelet on here. Once again, though, it's an inexpensive watch. I do think, though, if you're going to offer a bracelet, you should just do a better job or QC it better, or I'm just not really sure what is going on with this bracelet. I don't recall having the same issues on the last Steinhart that I had possessed. But regardless, I think a watch like this looks really good on other straps, so I probably wouldn't be wearing it on the bracelet normally anyway. So I'll show it to you on some leather and some nylon. Now looking at the Steinhart on a leather strap. This is a sort of suede or rough out leather strap from an Italian company called Colareb. It's a really nice kind of drab tan kind of camel color. It's a bit of a rugged look, which works really, really well with the matte titanium you have here. I think this color combination is great. It also even brings out the blue a little bit. And this really changes the look and feel of the watch, I think. The bracelet, like I said, was a kind of pull, kind of an anchor on the watch, and this lets it shine a little bit more. I think there's a lot more going on with the dial and just the case in general. Obviously, I know some people kind of think leather on a dive watch is some sort of sin, but I think that's kind of ridiculous, especially if you're just wearing it casually. Go in the water, then you should change your strap to suit the environment. But anyway, this is just, I think, a really nice pairing for it. Something you could do. And I think also you see how this works now with the colors I'm wearing. I think it just makes the whole watch a little bit more lively and wearable. Now just taking a look at the Ocean One Titanium on a nylon mill strap here. Obvious pairing, the gray color, or the green color, once again, works really, really nicely for the same reasons as the leather strap. With the titanium, it's kind of drab, it kind of brings it out a little. This actually really makes the blue pop in my eyes, which, that is probably one of my favorite features of the watch in general, is that little hint of blue that is around. So this is just a nice look with that. It also makes it, a little bit more aggressive, perhaps. There is something kind of militaristic about this handset on this watch. So it is just, I think a nice pairing and an obvious, a good way to wear it in the summer, or if you actually are going to go swimming with this, etc. A nylon strap will always work for that. To wrap up, the Steinhart Ocean One Titanium 500 Premium. I think it's a cool offering from the brand. I like that it's taking things in a little bit of a different direction. It's not just an homage watch, it's a play on the style. So you're definitely getting some of the sub feeling, but you're also getting something different, something that neither Rolex or Tudor offers, and obviously then at a really accessible price point. It is their premium watch line, so it is a little bit higher than other Steinharts, a couple $100 so even. But at $530, I mean, the package really is very strong, like on paper at least. You have a really nice sapphire crystal, you have a ceramic bezel, you have a titanium case and bracelet and crown and etc. And then you have what in my opinion is the biggest value-adding piece, which is the Soprod A10 movement. At the same time, you have this high-value movement, this really kind of boutique-y movement in there, and there is, in my opinion, a sense of the price being where it is because some of the other components are not up to where you want it to be. I would love to see what the $1,000 version of this watch is. Granted, at $1,000, maybe it wouldn't be a compelling argument to have a kind of a Rolex Submariner feeling watch. It's just too much money for that kind of a thing. But there's some issues I found with the case, the finishing all over. I mean, the bracelet itself doesn't match. The bracelet there's something weird with the bracelet. I'll say that, that's how I feel. But it doesn't feel like it's finished correctly. And then there's some different tonality from the titanium in a couple different parts, which I had pointed out. It does not affect how it wears, does not affect how it feels. Still a very comfortable watch. I think the dial is very attractive, especially if you're like subs. I think the lume is great. So, it's just all these kind of pros and cons. In the end of the day, though, it is a very affordable way to get a movement that is likely more to be found in $1,500 watches. So, you can kind of think of that as you will. Please read the full review of the Steinhart Ocean One Titanium on worn&wound.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you.